There are secrets out there, guys, performance marketing secrets, and knowing just one or two of them can absolutely light up your funnels. Let's go. This is the Revenue Driven CMO. I'm your host, Chris Mechanic. Join me as I uncover the secrets of the world's most elite CMOs and marketing leaders. The Revenue Driven CMO is sponsored by Web Mechanics, the AI-driven performance agency that makes you smarter. Hello, everybody. Welcome to another episode of Revenue Driven CMO. I'm your man, Chris Mechanic, here with a really exciting guest, an incredible marketer that's been behind some of the most successful companies in the world. She's been at SAP, she's been at Google, HP, Accenture, Time Warner, you name it. Her resume is just amazing. She earned Top Women to Watch, PR Week's Top Women to Watch in 2020. And she's also been recognized as a top 50 influencer marketer by Talking Influence and Top Digital Marketing on LinkedIn. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the show, Amisha Gandhi. How are you, Amisha?
I'm fantastic. How are you?
I'm doing great. I'm really excited to dig in with you here today. You know that our audience is all about those secrets. We're trying to pick up secrets any chance that we can. Tell us, what is one of your best kept secrets to marketing success?
I think when we look at leadership and leaders, we all want to be inspired. Why do we join some of these companies? We're inspired by their vision, right? So
Yeah.
I think one of the secrets is how can you be an inspiring and a strategic leader, but at the same time, help break down that inspiration and strategy so that your team can execute, not just achieve those goals, in revenue, but really feel good about crossing that finish line and feel that really great sense of accomplishment. Because when people feel that, even with the smallest teams, you can achieve amazing things, right? Like if you think about being a coach, you need to be inspiring, but you need to get your team there, right? So
Yeah.
it's that kind of mindset that you bring into leadership, and I think that works. I think some people are amazing inspiring leaders and they surround themselves with others that can help break it down.
Yeah.
Right. But if you're in a big company, great. If you're in a smaller startup environment, then you have to be the one that can break it down. And I think that's an interesting combination, but that's where I think some companies fail. They inspire, but then it falls flat, or there's no inspiration and you're just executing.
Yeah. So it's like inspiration without perspiration, or actually like the tactical plan just doesn't work. Inspiration itself is not enough. The tactical plan itself is not enough. You need both inspiration and the tactical plan. And I think for most marketers and most leaders, I feel like the tactical plan is probably the easier part. Like everybody can sort of put a project, or it seems like a more common skill to put a project plan and a tactical plan in place. As a leader, you might even delegate that to somebody, just to like, hey, make this plan. Let's talk about the inspiration piece. Like, how do you build inspiration in a team? Especially, it's probably easy if you are a sexy brand doing something awesome, like say you're like Airbnb or something, where it's like, we're changing the way that, people travel. Like that's an inspiring vision in and of itself. But what if you're a slightly like more boring or more normal company? Say that you're some B2B software company with some, better mousetrap to do XYZ logistical, whatever thing. How do you take something that's maybe a little bit on the boring side and make it really inspirational?
So I think some of the boring companies we think about, they're doing things that are helping, I was just at a fintech company, so we were helping the office of CFO, right? And it was more back-end office. Or like when I was at SAP for a long time, a lot of things we did were back-end processes, right? And workflows. Those are them in and of itself is not exciting. But if you think about marketing and marketing to those personas and making it in a way like we are actually changing how they're doing their job and we're making their jobs better. Here's some customers we've helped. Listen to how we've helped them. And that becomes an inspiration for everyone. There's also the company culture that you're attracting people to, right?
Mm-hmm.
So it's two-pronged. It's not just your company's doing this big, sexy thing. No, our company's doing something that's very solid and it's making this impact. Oh, by the way, we're also a company where you get to come and do some really incredible work in a very, you know, holistic environment, or environment where your career is going to be nurtured, right? So people either want to work at some cool company, or they want to work somewhere where that's going to help their own career and they're going to grow and learn something. So you need to have that more so than anything else, to me. And that's how you really inspire people, because you're creating an environment where they're going to come and learn something and have a career. And it's going to help them in their career. I think that's how people keep and retain people, and also keep them inspired.
Interesting. So that sounds almost like a one-to-one approach. That sounds almost like a, hey, let's sit down, let's plan out your career progression. And also, we are changing the way that CFOs work. But am I hearing that right? That basically, like,
it's both. It's both. It's like the work that they're going to do is going to be something that they're going to learn from, and it's one-to-one at the direct manager level, right? That manager needs to be able to do that. But you, as the leader of a marketing org, right, CMOs, you're creating a vision of, like, this is the big aha we're going to go after this year. This is the revenue model. This is the content we've all talked about as leadership team. This is the vision. This is how we're going to get there. And then the rest of marketing is like, oh, that's great. Rah, rah, rah. We feel excited about that. But also, I'm going to learn this. I'm going to get to take on something. So at Tipalti, we wanted to redo the brand. And so I told our creative team, there is no box. Pretend there's no box for finance. What would you do to make this a very interesting brand? Like, let's get crazy. Let's think about Dos Equis, the most interesting man in the world. How would you do that for us? Let's just, think about it in a very different way. And so the team went, we went off and we talked to lots of different people, and then we came back and we executed on and ended up on something very different for finance brand, which was art house photography. And instead of saying we get rid of manual processes, we said, we put you in charge. Show invoices who's boss. That's very taking something that's not exciting and making it really exciting, because we decided to do that, right? And then so that the team is inspired, and because of the work they were doing, the rest of the marketing org was like, we want to get behind this. The DG team was like, we're going to do message testing on this, see if it works better for persona. Product marketing was like, we're going to take it to our customers. So everybody had a piece of that pie. And so you felt like you're working on something really exciting, and everybody was learning something new at the same time, right?
Yeah.
And so when you create that, so you tell your team there isn't a box. I don't believe there's a box. I think people are like, oh, my job is content marketing. Sure, your job is content marketing. Here's your responsibilities and what you do. But there's not a box around your thinking, right? It depends the company that you're at and the leaders that you're surrounding yourself with. There's not a box. We're trying to achieve X. How do you think we could get to X? I can come up with a great content marketing strategy. My leader, head of content and brand, could come up with something, but the person who owns it, you want to empower them to be able to do that too, and then support them, right? And then guide them, and then give them feedback, right? That's why they ask the leader, like, are you do approve or not? You get feedback, your team can then improve on or fine tune what they're working on. But if you tell people imagine there's no box, what would you do? When you do those types of exercises with your team, it's incredible how creative people in marketing can be, even if they're in demand gen, how they can think about, like, let me go ask some other people at other companies what they're doing. And that's how you really bring innovation into your team, because everyone is like, wow, I have no limits. Let me see what I can do. And that's what brings it in. Like, for me, one of the things that we did was to drive more inspiration and career is I put aside some money every year and said, okay, we have X amount of dollars, it's 50,000, 100, whatever it is, whatever you can do. And this last time it was 100. And we said, this money is open for a innovation project. So the challenge to the marketing team is you can have this money. The way you get this money to do a project is it can't be something that you didn't get to do, that you put budget for and now you don't get to do it. It is a project for innovation. You have to pick somebody else on a different team in marketing, and one person outside of marketing has to be on your team. You have to create a team and come up with an idea of something new that you want to try in marketing for the year, and that's a project. It's like a skunk works project, if you will. And so we had 6 teams that came to it, and you got to present to like the CRO, me, the CEO, like to a panel of the executives, and then we would vote. And the whole marketing team was there. A lot of other people from other parts of the company came, and everybody watched you present. And then after the presentations were done, there was a voting round. And then there was like a first place and so then people got money. Actually, 2 teams got money, but they
Nice.
were different things for the company. And that incites different type of thinking outside of the everyday, right? That's how you can force, if you're not getting innovation, right, and you're at a company that's been around forever, that's a good way. I do this as a startup, but you can do that as, that gets some innovation and some excitement going, and everybody else and your peers are watching you. Then some of the peers who didn't try were like, I want to do this next time because this was exciting to watch. And then everybody gets to see the project come to life. And then when we launched the project that won, everybody was behind it, and they were like, that was amazing, and it got good results. And so you want to create, sometimes you have to create those moments for your team, and
Yeah.
that will lead to a lot more inspiration, right? Like for us, that brand, the rebranding, right, that became very inspiring for a lot of people, not just in marketing but across the company,
Yeah.
right? And in order
So
to do that, we just
what is something that uh executives, leaders that are listening right now could do basically to provide a boost of inspiration and motivation to their
I think you
teams?
really have to think of I think we all look at our financial models, right? As CMOs, we look at the financial model. We look at these are the things we have to do. We're in this macroeconomic climate. So we're not, it's not a fun time right now. Everybody's stressed out. Really think about the framework of your plan. Look at your marketing plan. What are the things that, we're really going back to basics in marketing right now. We're looking at where can we optimize? Where can we do better? Are we doing the right message testing with our persona? Are we getting people in the door faster? Like people are taking longer time to make decisions because maybe they don't have the budgets either, right? So they're going to pick some things that are must-haves versus nice to have. How do you make yourself a must-have, right? And so sometimes people think like there's nothing inspiring in that, right? No, do a brainstorm with your team, like
Mm-hmm.
every quarter, or do a brainstorm at the beginning of the quarter. So we have our plan. We're going to do a brainstorm. How can we? And everybody bring their ideas. What are the things that we are investing in and not investing in? Where are the gaps? Do an audit. Like go across and listen to everyone and do an audit. Find the gaps and say, hey, this is the audit we did. These are the gaps we have right now. We want to fill them in and do a brainstorm around them. Include everyone because everyone has skin in the game, right? Because then you're being very transparent. This is what's going on. This is our model. Okay, everybody knows the plan. Okay, fine, we'll go do it. No, we have the plan. How we need to take a look at ourselves, right? Now we're at the mid-year point. Did what we said work? Did it not work? Where else can we optimize as we go in the last half of this year where things are not still looking as up as we want them to, right?
Yeah.
How are we going to do that? Where should we cut as a team? Where should we invest? And make it a brainstorm and say, what are some big things that we can do or a stake in the ground that we can make that can pull us forward, right? And if you do that, I think then you're creating that framework. You take that framework of, everybody understands the plan. So you have your yearly plan and you have your quarterly OKRs. You have to have that so everybody knows what they're doing, right?
Yeah.
You take that and say, here's the project, here's the new campaign we're going to do in the fall. What are we going to do that's going to optimize these gaps? And then you sit back and let people give because there are some ICs on your team that maybe never got a chance to put their idea forward, and it's time they can do that. Then you can go back as a leadership team and do that. But then everyone has skin in the game. I think people are so stressed right now. They're like, oh my gosh, we can do this. Then we have to do this. Then we have to just get it done. If you do that, everyone's just running around like a hamster on a wheel, right?
Yeah.
You take the step back, now we're at the mid-year point, and do that, and then create the framework. Okay, this brainstorm, these are the way we're going to do these gaps. Maybe there isn't anything super creative there. That's okay. But your team is now invested, right?
Yeah.
Because everyone's rolling up their sleeves together. They see that you're rolling up your sleeves too. I think if you're just like, oh, I'm blah, 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 this great vision, and you go away, then you're leading from an ivory tower. No, this is the time where I think leaders need to roll up their sleeves and really be on the farm, on the field with their teams.
Yeah. And I think the the concept of inspiring team members sometimes tends to get lost in the day-to-day shuffle, because everybody's super busy. I mean, it can be difficult to take time aside either for that brainstorming session or for the one-to-one to talk about career paths and progression. But there's a distinct feeling, and from the agency world, I can feel it, even more distinctly because we work with many different clients and each has their own team. And you can really feel a palpable difference, like when a team is into it and inspired and motivated. And I think that the key is that thing you were saying about brainstorming and allowing people basically to come up with the idea themselves. I'm guilty of this myself sometimes. Like I'll get a very specific idea and I'll ask the team, like, hey, can we do this specific thing? Like, let's do it kind of that way or this way and that
Right.
way. Uh, and I find that, people will do it, but they'll even if you don't ask them to, oftentimes put their own twist on it. I think it's just human nature, like you don't want to just follow orders blindly, especially as you gain skills and experience. Like you'd rather be, I think nine times out of 10, marketers want to be told what the goal is and not necessarily how to get there.
Yeah, and I think the other big part of like inspiration and motivating teams, getting everybody on the same page and rowing, it's about rowing in that direction, right? Together. And you feel like you're part of this bigger, larger organization and company, but also on this team is that connectedness. So that whole brand campaign, we connected it all the way through DG, right? So that means everyone on the team was connected into it. I think a lot of times there's a lot of great ideas in marketing. You're like, oh, look at the advertising team or look at, the DG team. And everyone's like, they're getting roses at their feet because they brought in all this money. And I feel like I just did all this content and I'm just being ignored, right? But if you need to create that connectedness of like, okay, when we do things like this, everybody's involved, they're working on it, and they understand their piece of the puzzle, right?
Yeah.
Because otherwise, your leader should understand, hey, I need to create connectedness between DG and content, product marketing, marketing ops, if I want my project to really work. Because you need tracking, you need all the things to make your ideas work, right?
Yeah.
Oftentimes, people go off and say, I'm going to go do this page in PPC and do this messaging. I'll ask content for a little bit of help. I'll get what I need, but they're not telling or showing anyone what they're actually the end product. They're just like, I need this from you, I need this from you, and I need this from you, and now I'll go off and get this project done.
Yeah.
That's fine. That's for every day to day. Yes, you need to do that. But for those other bigger things that you're trying to get those inspiring things done, when you talk about breaking it down, it has to be broken down so everybody understands your piece of the puzzle and how it connects to each other, and they should be working together. That's how you see some of these small, nimble teams come out of the water and it looks like they've executed on this amazing, flawless campaign. And you're like looking at large companies and they're like fumbling around. I think it's that not having things in silos and that connectedness of the way your team works together is
Yeah.
really crucial, and especially for those startups. So for me, it's you create that inspiration, you create those breakdowns of the leaders, but then you also need to put the onus on yourself as a leader and others on your team to make sure that that connectedness happens when you're doing this kind of work.
Yeah.
Because and create that framework, and it can't just be, a lot of people use tools like Asana or Monday and they're just throwing things in there and people are like just doing them.
Right.
No, take a breath and say, this is what we're doing together and why we're doing it together, not just become so task oriented. Because then people are just doing task after task after task, which they do already in day to day. Everybody does that. I do that too, right? It's your task. And then you have that space for like the work. And
Yeah.
everybody in marketing, even if you're marketing operations, there's like that piece that everyone loves to do, right?
Yeah. So you've inspired me because I have been guilty myself of being the type of leader, the type of manager that's like, hey, almost like on a need to know basis, right? Like I don't want to have 10 people in the meeting if it's just like 3 people that are going to be, primarily participating. And I've been pretty rigid around that for most of my career, but I'm starting to rethink it now because because it's not a waste of time, right? Like, for say that you're a designer and there's a campaign happening. It's one thing to receive a written brief like, hey, we need XYZ number of
Right.
ads. But I think the ability to participate in those meetings, even though they may not directly like need to be there, quote unquote, I think involving them early and often, like not just a creative person, but everybody on the team, there's definitely merit to that, because then it's like it becomes more than the sum of its parts.
Yeah, and you can assign people, like not everybody on the design team. You get that person that's like, you're like the liaison for this project. Your job now is to bring the viewpoint, and then now you have to go back and communicate to everybody in design what's happening. So they understand this too, right? Because then what you're also doing is you're then, some ICs now have the opportunity to manage something, even though they're
Yeah.
not a manager, or be a lead on something that they're not a lead on, right? So they're getting some, leadership training there. And then for you, like, yeah, not everyone can be on a meeting, right? And you don't want to waste time with a bunch of meetings. You want to be judicious. So you can have people be assigned and create like these little task forces, right? But the job of that task force is to tell people on their team. The other thing is, the way I kill time is I had all hands, with my team, I always had all hands every week. Depends on your team and what you're trying to book. To start up, things move really fast. We had an all hands meeting was required. It was just that meeting that everybody was on together. And we had I believe in water cooler movement. So, and there were remote people on the team too. So again, about creating that environment. The first 5-6 minutes were people being in breakout rooms with one other person they didn't know, like it was just random, and saying, hi, how are you? And just catching up. So even if you're in the office, the first part of our meeting always started everybody at their desk. And then we're like, okay, everybody's in the office. You come to the room, or say, to come in or whatever, stay at your desk, however you want to do it, right? Because everyone is online or in the room, right? And if you're in the room, you're not allowed to have side conversations. If you have a side conversation, you need to tell the group. So that made it a thing of the culture of that meeting, like, because then everybody remote is like everybody in the office laughing, eating cupcakes. I'm just sitting here and I'm bored, right? That's not fair. So you have to create the construct for all of this to work. And then that all hands, it would be, here are the top 3 things that we did this week. Great, rah, rah, rah. 15 minutes, now you're like 20 minutes of meeting. Okay, now the rest of the meeting is, these are the things that are coming. These are the things that are long-term and that everybody needs to know about, to start thinking about this in this way. And it's not me or anyone in the leadership TikToking. It's somebody from the team who's actually doing the work, or it's 2 or 3 people, and they're telling the rest of the team, because that gives the rest of your team to speak up and be seen. Everybody knows who the leaders are. You don't really need to hear from us, do you? Like all the time.
Right.
And then it's not just telling your team, you go do this. You tell a person, you go do this by this date, you go do this. But everyone is on the same page, right? And everyone sees, these are the priorities for marketing. This is the update. By the way, the leadership team has decided that we're not launching this product. Here's why. We need to catch up because we fell behind this other category. And you're able to disseminate information there. And then you have 10 minutes for Q&A, or Q&A along the way, depending on what you're doing. I did that every week. And that really was a great forcing function for even me and my leadership team to say, we spend 10 minutes on it every week. What are we doing this week? Why? What does the team need to know together, not separately, but together? And what decisions were made? Are there any cultural things? We even had a cultural team. We had a little task force of a culture team where, we would do big quarterly things together to celebrate the quarter. And then they were like baby showers and other things, but everything was virtual and remote because everybody was everywhere.
Yeah.
So it brings culture, right? See, it's about, I guess my point is, it's about creating these constructs. So you're not wasting people's time. You're making those efficient, effective use of people's time, but you're still able to provide those moments, right? Where people can be inspired, where people get that connectedness. Then you're creating that culture that people really want to be a part of.
I love that. Yeah, that makes a ton of sense. And I particularly like the idea of having the teams individually presenting their plans and ideas, because then it's like Facebook official, kind of official. It's like, okay, they have stood up in front of the team and now, and described this whole plan. So they're definitely going to be owning that out. Hey, one last
Yeah, and
thing.
the whole thing of ownership. Yeah, people feel like really proud, and then their colleagues are like, "Wow, I didn't think this person was really helping us, and wow, this person is actually doing all this work." Didn't know.
Yeah. Hey, we could go on for a long time about this. This is a really interesting topic. I want to talk, or I have one more question on inspiration, and then I want to switch gears to something else real quick. But you've worked at a lot of amazing companies. You did a particularly long tenure at SAP or SAP. Uh, when you're thinking back, when did you feel most inspired? Like at what point? Just tell me the story of, the company, the management team. Like when have you, not as a leader, but as a member of a team, been most inspired by other leaders?
I think I have to go back. I think at SAP to be, really inspired, right? I think I joined at SAP 2010, a long time ago now. And I joined, there was one CEO. And at that time when I joined, people are like, why did you join SAP? What a boring ERP company you joined. I said, no, they're doing a lot of really cool things. It'll be interesting. And they really work on business. And it's really exciting. They have like amazing customers, right? It's very exciting to be part of that. So they're like, that's interesting. A month into SAP, they went to co-CEO model, and there was Bill McDermott came and Jim Hagamishnaba. And the way Bill McDermott talked about SAP was so different and so inspiring. It was like just the guy off, around the block, very relatable to a lot of people, not just in the US, but worldwide. He's like a self-made person, right? And he tells those stories in a way to employees that are very inspiring. He's like, we're going to change it. We're going to take SAP, it's like a 30,000 person company. We're going to become like IBM and GE. That's what our goal is. And by 2023, we're going to be like a $5 billion company. That's a really audacious thing to say. And everybody's like, oh my God, that's like huge. Like we're just like an ERP company. And he said, we are doing these acquisitions. We're going to grow our portfolio and we're going to get innovation really fast in the company. So he's like, buckle up. It's going to, buckle up and get ready to roll up your sleeves. I mean, to me, that was inspiring. I came from the startup world. Wow, that's amazing. This person is going to come in and along with, and Jim Hagamishnaba is doing the product stuff. And he said a lot of inspiring things like, wow, this is exciting. They're like, we're going to break things. We're going to do things, fresh. And we want that. And we're looking for ideas. And they created all these different groups to like really get people, like all employees sort of input. They had contests and different things to really get people involved.
Yeah.
Right. And that
Like the
changed.
constructs that you were talking about.
Yeah, they changed the way the company was. They changed the way people thought about the company. So, Jonathan Becker was then the CMO, and the way he did things, he was a business person also, but he also inspired the marketing team and said, "Okay, Bill has done all these wonderful things. How now? What are we going to actually do and become this brand, but also build a revenue? This is what we need to do." And so they made a lot of changes and Jonathan was really great about communicating about those changes, why they were happening, and what you could do to be a part of that. Right. And that is very inspiring for a lot of people. And then you feel energized. You're like, wow, we're going to do something that hasn't been done, or we're going to change this company and make it like this amazing thing. Now, when I say message, people are like, wow, that's great. It
Right.
was never, people want to talk to you. They're like, oh, you had a long run at SAP. That's fabulous. Tell me about it. Like that can be very inspiring. One of their first acquisitions after Business Object that they made was Sybase, and that was around mobile. And I had the opportunity to be a part and build a whole mobile marketing organization from scratch along with my boss. That was an amazing experience. That was all part of this change.
Yeah. So I'm curious. So you've met Bill McDermott, it sounds like.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Oh, he's a badass. He's now at ServiceNow, and I've seen him actually on CNBC. And he was inspiring even to watch then, just like giving a regular interview. But I'm curious, once he kind of got involved, was it just like a straight shot, or was there significant adversity and setbacks and failures along the way? And
I
how were
think the
those dealt
biggest
with?
thing, yeah, I think the biggest thing is SAP had never had a US based lead CEO like that, right? It was all Germany based. A lot of, it was a very global company at the time. You couldn't say like, here's the base, but and a lot of marketing was in the US, right? As well as in Germany. And everyone felt like when I joined SAP, I went to Germany a lot. And I was very lucky that my boss got me involved in projects because that's how you get things done. It's like whoever sits closest to the power, right? Like that's how you can get things done at companies like that. So by doing this, SAP went from just, oh, they're a German company to like, no, we're a global company. We have the right leader, but he had to win over everyone in Germany and Europe and other parts besides because he's very, very strong. And then Jim Hagenstama is very, very strong in Germany, right? So everybody kind of flocked to him over here. And so instead of him saying, oh, you get this, and no, he was really good about sharing. And he always gave Jim time and said, this is important. What he's doing is this. And he would always throw it over to make sure. And then he understood what he needed to do. But it was a journey. It didn't happen overnight. It didn't go like this. There were some, fits and starts. Like everybody in Germany's like, oh my gosh, like this American's going to tell us what to do. He actually was very, how he talks, that's just who he is. It's how he is. It's not like a made up personality that he has. A lot of CEOs are like big and then they're like something else behind. No, that's just who he is. He's somebody from New York. He's, had like a stand and sold sandwiches or whatever it was, right? And he's built everything from the ground up for himself, right?
Nice.
And he did sales, so he knows how to put in the elbow grease, right? And I think people really saw that over time, and that's how he really won a lot of people over. Is through just he was very authentic and real. And I think sometimes being authentic and real can be very different at a company like an SAP where it's more buttoned up. It was, just slightly different. And he had that kind of energy. But for a global company, you need somebody like that, right?
Yeah.
And so he inspired a lot of people. And when people saw him and they see him speak, they're like, maybe I should check out SAP. So then, attracting talent becomes better. Then people want to work where you are, right? And then making those right business decisions of acquisitions, right? Some of those worked well, some of them didn't. And then I think that one of the biggest things is when Bill actually had an accident with his eye and the way he behaved after that and how humble he was and how real he was with that, I think it really won the hearts and minds of everyone at the company. It really, really did.
Interesting. Tell me about that a little bit. I didn't realize he had a thing with his eye. I was wondering why he always wore sunglasses.
No, so Bill had an accident with his eye, and so he had to get surgery, and that's why he wears sunglasses, right? Because he had a extensive damage. And so a lot of leaders would say, oh, I need to go off and get healed. And, it's kind of like it was a really big thing, right? He was really, really hurt, actually. And it took recovery. He bounced back from that and he said, I'm here. This happened to me. I need to recover, but I'm going to continue being the great leader that I am, even though I have this injury, right? And everyone was just like, wow, this is somebody who's taken, you're losing, you have that happen. A lot of people can say, oh, I have a disability now or whatever, and kind of go away. No, he just came back even stronger. And he said, this is going to make me a better leader. It's given me more humility in life. It's just like the way he talked about it and the way he shared what he went through in a very open way. People were just like, wow, that's amazing. He was very transparent about everything. And so I think that won a lot of people over because a lot of people thought, wow, what will happen, right?
Yeah.
But sometimes these things happen to people and they go away. I look at like Sheryl Sandberg, like what happened to her husband passed away suddenly. She came back and she bounced back, right? And when people see that, you're even more inspired. You're like, wow, what an incredible human to have some adversity, overcome it in this way, and keep moving forward.
Yeah. No, that's a great story. Cool, Misha. We could keep going for a long time. I do have some other questions, but I want to be cognizant of your time, and I know that we're getting close here. Can I ask one more thing real quick before we get to the lightning round?
Fire away.
So, at some point in your time at SAP, it seems that your role really changed, like in a dramatic way, where you went from it looked like kind of a focus on strategy and product marketing to then suddenly you were head of global influencer marketing and demand gen. And that was, 2015 to 2018. And even to this day, you don't see a lot of B2Bs talking about influencer marketing much, or even more rarely like doing effective influencer marketing. So you might think that like SAP would be the last place that would, be an early adopter of influencer marketing in like the enterprise B2B. How did that come about? And sort of like what was the thesis? How did you find yourself in that role?
So I found myself in that role because I was in mobile and mobile was getting pulled into S4 HANA at the time, and I didn't have a job. So it's like I basically didn't have a job at SAP. And I had started influencer marketing. I got the idea from Blogger Relations that you can have people who are influencers or influences strong enough that your buying persona is listening to and getting advice from, right? It's
Yeah.
not Dove soap or shoes, but they are getting advice from these people. They get advice from analysts, right? When they make big software decisions, right? So are there these other folks that are influencers on them?
Mhm.
So I had been doing some videos in mobile marketing that did really, really well in our campaigns because we had third party influencers in the mobile industry, even from the consumer side, talking. And that's how we had gotten ourselves in some of the shows and things by associating ourselves with these folks, right? And creating those relationships. So I
Mhm.
thought, could we do that as a brand across all of our businesses and work and not just, co-create content, even co-create demand gen plays, right? Because it comes down to revenue. And
Mhm.
social is great, but it's not going to pay, it's not going to, you're not going to buy enterprise software that way, right?
Right,
So
right.
that was my thesis. That was my idea. And then I shopped it around. I was like, I need a job. By the way, I'd like to do this job that does not exist anywhere at any company in B2B, but I think we could do it for demand gen. And there was a new demand gen leader, and my old boss, Jim Dever, he actually fought for me and he got me in front of her and he said, now pitch your idea. Pitch it to her. And I said, and she said, it has to be for demand gen, not social or just content. And I said, sure, we can do it for demand gen. And I was like, yeah, figure this out. Because my whole idea was around co-created content. So instead, I thought of ABM plays. I thought of how we could invite influencers to do demos, to actually be in the cycle
Mhm.
with us. And so I then had to go around and pitch other colleagues. She said, I'll give you the job. You go ask your colleagues for budget and headcount or whatever resources you need from them. You pitch your idea to them now and see if they'll give some of their campaign dollars from DG to you. And she said, I'll give you a year. And whatever you do in the year, whatever success you have, we'll look back on it, we'll reassess. And if not, you can do something else, but we'll give your idea a year. And that's how I got that job. And so I
Nice.
started with one project, pilot project for CIO. We had 4 influencers come and do an ebook with us and do a series of videos with us. And we put it out in and we did a campaign. So it was at a drip and everything of its own. So it was a full top mid funnel campaign and
Mhm.
drip all the way through. And we even had some stuff for sales, and they could pull these people into some of their big deals if they wanted to, because
Oh,
one of them
cool.
actually implemented SAP. So that's what we did. And that campaign did so well, that series that we did so well, we paired it with an event that was already going on. And I spent maybe 20 grand on the whole project because I didn't have any
Wow.
money. I could convince somebody else for like scraps. I got a scrap. That's what I did. And then it became one of the most used campaigns of the year at the company for this persona set at SAP. And it did so well. It delivered a lot of ROI. People were really engaged. People wanted to come to the event more because they saw these people. They wanted to see these people. They didn't care about SAP. And once they were there, they were then engaged with SAP, and we could keep them going in the conversation at that level.
Brilliant.
So that's
Well, Amisha,
how I got my start.
that
Yeah.
was definitely ahead of its time. But I think an evergreen, always relevant marketing principle is basically, okay, who's your buyer? Who are they listening to? Who are they influenced by? How do we pair up with them? Winning
Yeah.
formula every day.
Yep.
And you were the first to discover it in enterprise B2B, or one of them.
Well, one of the first of many, right? But I did
Yeah.
it at a big brand, right? And I don't think anyone else did. I kind of made up a lot of things that were on. There were also lots of failures, right? I think every failure is just setting up the learning for the next success.
That's the soundbite of the episode right there. I love it. Cool, Amisha. Well, let's move into the lightning round and then we'll wrap here. The lightning round is 3 questions. And I want your just shoot from the hip answer. Question number 1. If you were to start a side hustle, what would that side hustle be?
What's your side hustle? It would be cooking. I believe in chai, Indian chai. Nobody does Indian chai the way it should be done. So I would do that, and I would call it Chai Mama.
Nice. It sounds like you've given that some thought. I bet you that would work though. Chai Mama sounds good. Cool. Number 2, top 3 influencers or authors or books even that have made an impact on your career.
I think Simon Sinek, because he's very positive, and a lot of things that he says, inspire a lot of people. I'm really into inspirations,
Yeah,
I think, and it's
why.
very positive. Yeah, start with the why. So that's a great one. And I always think about, why are we doing this, right? So I love a lot of his talks. I'm reading a book right now called Tiny Habits by BJ Novak. And I think everyone in marketing or GTM leader should read it, because it's really about moving the needle in the smallest ways to have the biggest impact. So that's something I'm currently reading. And then I think lastly, like Brene Brown, again, like another person that's providing a lot of inspiration, right? To a lot of people, and it's positive. I think we all need positivity right now. And so, listening to her is always inspiring. And she's also a woman, right? So we want to uplift women as much as possible.
Cool. Well, Amisha, this has been awesome. Thank you very much for coming out and for sharing all this wisdom with us.
No, this was a lot of fun. And I look forward to hearing from the rest of your podcast too, because I've learned a lot of things from them as well.
Brilliant. Cool. And for everybody listening at home, if you learned something or laughed a little bit today, go ahead and drop us a like or a comment or share this with a friend. Keep the love flowing. We do appreciate that. And Amisha, for the listeners, if they want to learn more about you or get in touch, what would be the best way to do that?
Come find me on LinkedIn.
On LinkedIn, it is. All right, cool. Well, we'll include a link to that LinkedIn in the show notes. And it's Amisha Gandhi, badass B2B marketing force. I like it. This
and
was
if
great.
You like cooking, you can follow me on Instagram at Amisha Cooks.
Oh, not Chai Mama.
No, not yet.
You got to do that. That sounds like a great idea. Cool, Amisha. We'll stay on the line just a minute. And for everybody else, thank you very much. That concludes another exciting episode of Revenue Driven CMO. We'll see you next time. And that's a wrap. Thanks for joining us here today. For show notes and other episodes, visit us at revenuedrivencmo.com. That's revenuedrivencmo.com. And hey, exclusive for listeners of this podcast, Web Mechanics will do 10 to 20 hours of work for you for free. Literally no sales calls, no BS. Just give them a problem and they will put a team to work for you for free for 10 to 20 hours. Even if you're already a client, if you're struggling with demand gen, lead gen, SEO, SEM, Google ads, LinkedIn ads, conversion optimization, if you can't get Facebook or Meta ads to work for the life of you, or you can't figure out attribution, Web Mechanics will take a good hard look at whatever problem you give them, whatever programs you put in front of them, and they will give you an objective, informed opinion, plus some advice from 10 to 20 hours of senior level attention. And that's just because you're a listener of this podcast. So I would suggest take them up on this offer. It's ridiculous. Go to revenuedrivencmo.com/free, fill out the 2-minute form, and you will not regret it. Literally zero downside, unlimited potential for growth. So do yourself a favor, revenuedrivencmo.com/free, no hyphens, no punctuations. You will be happy about that decision.